Well, hello everyone, and welcome to week 6 of one of the busiest weeks of the course. Along with your normal assignments, you will have an exam to take this week. There's a lot to cover, so let's get started. In keeping with the subject of civil liberties and civil rights for this week, the anniversary of an event is very appropriate to consider. This event was a very tragic one that occurred during the civil rights movement. Three civil rights workers are found dead in Mississippi on August 4th, 1964. So let's look at the murders themselves. On June 21st, 1964, three young civil rights workers were murdered in Neshoba County, Mississippi. They had come to the Lauderdale County to investigate the burning of the Mount Zion United Methodist Church. The night of the church the night the church was burned, parishioners were also beaten in front of the flames. The murders were designed by members of the Lauderdale County Ku Klux Klan and was assisted by Klansmen of Neshoba County. The civil rights workers were part of a national movement that attempted to work towards a voter registration drive in the area, as well as setting up freedom schools. You may know this organization better as the Mississippi Summer Project, also Freedom Summer. A coalition of civil rights organizations known as the Council of Federated Organizations launched a project in Mississippi that sent out massive numbers of student volunteers to register black voters and to conduct freedom schools. And in these freedom schools, they offered curriculum of black history and arts to children throughout Mississippi. The victims, James Chaney, had grown up in Meridian, Mississippi, in nearby Lauderdale County. As a young student, he had been interested in civil rights work, which was very dangerous for him as a young white man, or as a young man in Meridian in Lauderdale County. Michael Schwerner was a Jewish New Yorker and came south to Meridian to set up a Council of Federated Organization office. Chaney was a volunteer at the Meridian office, and the two young men began to make visits to Neshoba County, searching for residents to sponsor voter registration drives and freedom schools. After contacting members of the Mount Zion United Methodist Church, the Mount Nebo Missionary Baptist Church, as well as other individuals, Chaney and Schwerner made plans for a council of Federated Organization projects in the area. Andrew Goodman was another New Yorker and was brand new to the movement. In mid-June, Chaney and Schwerner traveled to Oxford, Ohio, to participate in the Freedom Summer Volunteers training sessions. While they were away, Klansmen looking for Chaney and Schwerner assaulted members of the Mount Zion Church and burned it down. Chaney and Schwerner later heard of the attack, and now joined by Goodman, the three drove down to investigate and to offer comfort to the church members. On Sunday afternoon, June 21st, the three young men arrived at Meridian and visited members of this church. After leaving, they were pulled over by a sheriff's deputy while in the city limits of Philadelphia, Mississippi. Chaney was arrested and charged with speeding. Schwerner and Goodman were held on suspicion of burning the Mount Zion United Methodist Church. About 10:30 p.m., the three workers were released and ordered to leave town immediately. On the road to Meridian, they were pursued and overtaken by a group of men that included law enforcement officials. When the group stopped the three, they were pulled from their vehicle and driven to an isolated road where they were murdered. By the next day, news of the disappearance was known even at the White House. While many white Mississippians denounced the disappearance as a hoax to get attention for Freedom Summer, President Lyndon Johnson sent the National Guard and sailors from the nearby Meridian Navy base to search for the three civil rights workers. On June 23rd, the station wagon the young men had been driving was found burned. It should be noted that in Oxford, Ohio, the volunteers were informed that 3 of their own were missing and presumed dead. The volunteers were given a choice whether or not to continue the project that may cost them their lives. The volunteers understood and unanimously thought not to give in to the violence and that not to end the movement. As the search for their fellow volunteers continued, 1,000 young people poured into Mississippi, conducting voter registration drives and setting up freedom schools. In the swamps of Mississippi, federal search teams discovered nearly a dozen murdered African Americans, but the 3 civil rights workers could not be found. Finally, acting on a tip on August 4th, the FBI found the 3 bodies buried beneath a 15-foot earthen dam. Following years of court battles, 7 search teams, Following years of court battles, 7 of the 18 defendants were found guilty, including Deputy Sheriff Price, but none on murder charges. One major conspirator, Edgar Ray Killen, went free after a lone juror couldn't bring herself to convict a Baptist preacher. On November 24, 2014, over 50 years after the murders, President Barack Obama awarded James Chaney, Andrew Goodman, and Michael Schwerner the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the nation's highest civilian honor, posthumously. By the end of the summer, despite assaults and burnings of dozens of other churches in the state, the summer project had created an impact. Volunteers registered for more black voters, initiated a challenge to all-white Democratic Party that forever changed the national political landscape. Excuse me. Within 2 years, 100,000 new black voters registered in Mississippi and began running for public office. In 2004, Mississippi Attorney General Jim Hood reopened the investigation and by 2005 had indicted Edgar Ray Killen for murder. 41 years from the day that the Klan ambushed and killed the civil rights workers, Edgar Ray Killen was sentenced to 60 years in prison for the manslaughter deaths of all 3 workers in Philadelphia, the county seat of Neshoba County, Mississippi. I would encourage you to research this event and find out more intricacies about it. It was a horrible event in the history of the civil rights movement and absolutely in the history of the United States. So let's move on and see what we have due and the work for the week. The first 2 exams assigned to this class is going to be administered this week. So now let's go over a few points to take the exam for this week. It's the Civil Rights, Civil Liberties, Civil Rights exam. The exam is open to take from Friday, August 6th at 12:01 a.m. to Sunday, August 8th at 11:59 p.m. At 11:59 p.m., it's considered late. The exam is worth 100 points, with 25 questions worth 4 points per question. Late submissions will be accepted. However, each day the exam is late, 20% of your final grade will be deducted, unless the student communicates with the professor explaining why the submission needs an extension. If it's granted, there will be no penalties, but if you do not communicate with me and you don't take the exam on time, it automatically takes 20% off the final grade of the exam until there's 0 points left. Okay, now let's go over the directions for taking the exam. Firstly, go to iLearn, which is your Blackboard page. Click on Civil Liberties/Civil Rights Exam. You will be taken to our Connect page and the link to take the exam. The timer will start and click Continue to take the exam. Answer the questions. When you complete the exam, click Submit, which should be at the top right side of the page. If it is not, it'll be on the bottom of the page. Just find the word Submit and submit it. The exam will be automatically graded, so once you submit the exam, you have one chance to take it unless you talk to me, and then I'll open it up again for you. But after you complete the exam, it will automatically grade it, and you should see the grade within an hour on your Blackboard page, if not immediately. Okay, you should be familiar with this page by now. We break down every assignment down and explain what needs to be done, and these are grading events. So let's look at the chapters for the week, or chapters 4 through 5. Be sure and read the column that's underneath there, and everything should be familiar to you by now, but be sure and read them if you have problems. The class discussion, this is our last class discussion. Excuse me, week 6 has the last discussion. There will not be a discussion week 7 or week 8. Be sure to read the column underneath here as well. The video lectures. You have 2 lectures this week: Civil Liberties and Civil Rights, Introduction to Constitutional Law, 100 Supreme Court Cases Everyone Should Know. Now, the second video is long, and I don't expect you to go through the whole thing. My advice to you is pick out a few of those court cases to talk about in your discussion. You can do you can do as many as you want, but my advice to you is to do at least 2, but no more than 6. And then be sure and include that as information on your class discussion post. Okay? As always, if you have any questions or concerns about anything, please do not hesitate to ask me. And Homer is letting you know, which is, I guess I'm Homer in these, because I look like Homer, unfortunately. Don't be scared. You can do this. You have a lot to do, but I know you can do it. Okay, as always, you should now be aware of the information and expectations for this week, which will be week 6. And my advice to you after doing the work is, have a donut. All right, everybody. My horrible impersonation is over, but like always, if you have any questions or concerns, please do not hesitate to contact me. Okay? Have a great week.